Good morning.
It's morning in Portland.
Yes, we're almost ready to begin our show, and we like to give a few moments for people to gather. And so this is those few moments. And as you can see, Drinky Bird is here, and you can't see, but maybe you can hear the clicking that Neo the dog is here. And so we're slowly gathering all of our necessaries so that we can have a little bit of conversation, commentary on just the things that are going on.
We call it the state of the world and what's happening now.
Yeah, that stuff, current affairs. Currently, the dog is almost giving in to his usual urge to destroy whatever bedding I give him. Don't destroy it, lay on it. Yeah, go lay down.
He wants the bedding. He wants to destroy the bedding. Isn't that so much like human nature as well?
Well, I don't know. He
Okay.
looks so gleeful when he's destroying bedding. He's so.
But then he
happy.
looks so sad afterwards because
Yeah,
he
when
wants
he's
the bedding.
he wants to have a bed, but all he's got is shreds. Yes, he is a shredder.
I'm telling you, it's a little. We destroy that which we love. I think there's a whole philosophical
Isn't there a song?
something.
Anyway,
Yes.
so
Shall
I
we
think,
carry
I
on?
think I'll take Drinky Bird out of the picture here. Okay, yeah. When Drinky Bird's out of the picture, we're starting to get serious. I'm just glad that I have some hot coffee with cinnamon and nutmeg in it. There's nothing like that when you've got a COVID, which is what we've got. We're fighting COVID, trying to do this show. So we shall see whether we can focus. This is my focus look. I'm focusing.
I might be a little
I feel focused.
snottier than usual. Although, let's face facts. It was happening last week when I was sniffly and snorkely my way through the show.
Now let's just plow into it like a drunk into a bridge
Let's
barrier.
just anyway, we're really glad that you're with us this morning, and we're really glad that we're with you.
Yes.
Carry
I
on.
can see the light from my teleprompter.
I know I've mentioned this. This is why we need to get a printer again.
Okay.
Because if you put it right under your chin, it could be like,
It's kind of eerie looking.
I know, it's kind of like the campfire stories, but the news is that kind of scary, so I think it works.
Okay. Well, so the name of this program is This Is Now, Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell. That's
I'm
Ani Ravenhains. And Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas reported even more trips paid for by Texas billionaire and Republican mega donor Harlan Crow. Did that in 2022, and these are newly filed disclosures. This is from opensecrets.org. They say the new financial disclosure reveals that Crow, who is described in the new filing as a longtime friend of Filer and his wife, paid for Thomas' travel to speak at a conference in Dallas, which was hosted at the venue owned by Crow's company in May 22. Excuse me. Thomas also reported that Crow paid for another return flight from a separate event in Dallas and a trip to the Adirondacks,
we call it.
in New York, where Crow has a private resort that Thomas has reportedly visited every summer for several years. Notes attached to the financial disclosure indicate that Thomas flew privately on the May 22 trip due to increased security concerns. After a draft Supreme Court opinion overturning landmark abortion rights Roe v. Wade was leaked that month, Crow, that's his excuse. That's why he has to continue flying in a luxury jet. Crow reportedly treated Thomas and his wife, conservative activist Virginia Ginny Thomas, to luxury travel for over 2 decades, most of which did not appear on Thomas's financial disclosures. ProPublica's investigation, which found that Crow bankrolled luxury travel, a real estate deal, and tuition arrangements for the Thomases, spurred scrutiny of the justice finances and fueled calls for more transparency. The amended financial disclosures reveal that Ginny Thomas was paid nearly $700,000. This is where you make the $700,000.
It's not exactly chump change, is it?
No, between 2003 and 2007 by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative group that has weighed in on Supreme Court justice confirmation processes, filed multiple amicus briefs, and had cases before the Supreme Court. I think they call that corruption.
Yeah, I've heard about that somewhere.
Since the
That
amendments
seems to fit the definition.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. Of course, we know that Alito is in on this little game too, at the least, and there's more going on. So the Supremes are corrupt. We know this, and the question is, what are we going to do about it? And I think Alito wanted to fire over the bow couple of months ago when he said that Congress cannot approach Supreme. What did he say? The Congress can.
This was on you. I don't know where. I don't know the end of your quote.
He said that Congress cannot affect the Supreme Court, but Congress can,
that whole
actually.
3 distinct branches of government: the judicial, the congressional, and
Okay,
the
here's
executive.
his quote, right. He said, no provision of the Constitution gives Congress the authority to regulate the Supreme Court, period. And this is a Supreme Court justice saying this.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's
right
not quite
there
true, is
in
it?
the Constitution
Yeah.
in English. And I'll just read it. It says, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions, we put a capital E on the exceptions, and under such regulations as the Congress shall make, with such exceptions and under such regulations. Ding, 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 ding. Lying son of a bitch.
We got a winner, aka
God.
lying son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah, you can't touch us.
Yeah.
Because I just made that up because, I'm supposed to be an expert on law. So moving on. In its most aggressive move yet to protect federal land from oil and gas exploration, the Biden administration, I know what's wrong with that sentence, right? This is from the New York Times. The Biden administration announced on Wednesday that it would prohibit drilling in 13 million acres of pristine wilderness in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska and cancel all drilling leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. This is great news. This means they've cut off about half of what was available for drilling. The new regulations would ensure what the administration called maximum protections for nearly half the petroleum reserve, but would not stop the enormous $8 billion Willow oil drilling project in the same vicinity, which President Biden approved this year. So which way is the man going? Climate activists, particularly young environmentalists, were angered by Mr. Biden's decision in March to allow the Willow project, calling it a carbon bomb. Many call the move a betrayal of Biden's campaign promise of no new drilling, period, on federal lands and waters. Since then, the administration has taken pains to emphasize its efforts to reduce the carbon emissions that result from burning oil and gas and that are driving climate change. Much more in the New York Times on that. So I want to talk, what's going on in climate, but this week I kind of want to focus on the flooding. It's astonishing. There was an incident in Greece in which 20 inches of rain fell in a day. And it didn't fall because of some particular geographic feature. And we have had these mega floods here in the U.S. And this is one of the new things on top of heat domes that we have to watch for in this new climate world, which is that, like right here, right now, well, not this second, in Portland, we could get 20 inches of rain in a day, which would mean just the whole area would be flooded. You never think of, like, where are we up, 200 feet, 300 feet?
50.
We don't think of flooding here, but if 20 inches fell, then certainly the house would be flooded. And this is true for you and for everyone on Earth now. This is the way things are. Even Burning Man, apparently.
So we have major flooding in Hong Kong, major
6
flooding
inches in 1 hour. I remember I've experienced 2 inches in 1 hour, and you couldn't hear yourself talk.
Yeah, right, like that. And also in Brazil. And so it's really kind of a global phenomenon right now. We have tropical storms going in every which direction, and we have flooding going on in many parts of the world, and not just little floods, but like Teresa was saying, 6 inches in an hour, or in China in Greece, it was 22 inches in a day, right? Am I remembering that right? Something
it was
close
20.
to it.
It was something like 20. Yeah, it was measured in millimeters and came out to 20 inches. And this is one of those things. If I could have one thing come out from my comments and go across the world, it would be whenever anyone hears by the year 2050, they just go, ha, because this is not a matter of by the year 2050. As a matter of fact, last year you could have said, by the year 2050, we could have events in which 20 inches a day fall. You would say, oh yeah, that would be bad. We got to get things fixed by 2050. Don't ever fall for that by 2050 stuff. We're in the thick of it now, which means that we have to fight harder than ever.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not going to get worse. We're in the thick of it. We're at the beginning of it.
Yeah, I've been reading that the El Nino phenomenon, which is partly driving this, is going to be worse next year in 24. So a group of climate activists wearing shirts that read "End Fossil Fuels" delayed the semifinal match of the U.S. Open Tennis Championships. This is in Common Dreams. They delayed it by about 45 minutes in an effort to call greater public attention to the planetary emergency that is wreaking deadly havoc worldwide. That was on Thursday. One of the demonstrators glued his bare feet to the concrete in the stands at New York City's Arthur Ashe Stadium, requiring additional effort by medical personnel and police to remove him and take him into custody. The protesters were associated with the climate group Extinction Rebellion, New York City, which said in a statement Thursday that there is no tennis on a dead planet. And as I mentioned last week, Extinction Rebellion is planning more protests in New York next week, and and around the world, also here in Portland. Changing topics again, the Right Wing Watch says former Arkansas governor and failed presidential candidate Mike Huckabee. Pardon me while I COVID.
Would you issue for that?
I'm good.
All right.
Open the most recent episode of his Huckabee program on the Trinity Broadcasting Network by warning that if former President Donald Trump fails to win the 2024 election because of the multiple indictments he is facing, quote, is going to be the last American election that will be decided by ballots rather than bullets, end quote.
Oh, gee. Do you feel that there's a threat involved in that then? I mean, do you think he's just stating the facts?
Yeah.
What do you think, Teresa?
Well, I can quote him further. He says, quote, do you know how political opponents to those in power are dealt with in third world dictatorships, banana republics, and communist regimes? The people in power use their police agencies to arrest their opponents for made-up crimes in an attempt to discredit them, bankrupt them, imprison them, exile them, or all of the above. So and he says, if you're not paying attention, you may not realize that Joe Biden is using exactly those tactics to make sure that Donald Trump is not his opponent in 2024. So
projection is a powerful psychological tool.
Down, there was no January 6th. They were so peaceful. And, I don't know how that poop got on the walls.
Projection is such a powerful tool.
So Matt Gaetz is also with the poop smear parties, is saying that there needs to be a civil war. And who else is saying it? Yeah, betcha, lady. In Alaska? She could see Russia from Alaska. Sarah Palin is talking war. So, and this goes back to the Second Amendment, which grants white people guns. Conformist white people are allowed to have guns. And they believe that it gives them power. But I would note to anyone who thinks that it works that way, or that they've been granted power to change things with their guns, that every soldier in an army has gun. They have powerful guns, as powerful as they can make them. And yet every soldier in an army is a slave. It's their minds that are controlled. So speaking of control, a U.S. appeals court issued an order on Thursday temporarily ensuring that a barrier of floating buoys in the Rio Grande that was placed by Texas to discourage illegal crossings could stay in place while the court considered a full decision. That's from the New York Times. And you may have heard that the court had decided that the barrier should be taken away because it's a hazard to navigation, and because it's as cruel as they could possibly make it. It's absolutely medieval. They have circular saw blades in there that they've sharpened to cause wounds. They've got razor wire. They've got nets underneath, and it's been successful. You can find the bodies of dead children nearby. Already the border, just in the last few years, the border in Texas has killed more people than the Berlin Wall ever did. The Berlin Wall only ever killed 140 people, and it's much worse than that. They pull out bodies every day on the Rio Grande. Lawyers for Mr. Abbott in the state of Texas argued in court documents that a border security disaster had prompted the state to place the 1,000-foot barrier in front of the U.S. banks of the river to prevent illegal crossings, and that no evidence showed the buoys obstruct any navigable capacity of the river, which is just laughable. If you can imagine, trying to float your boat past this razor wire netting and circular saws, and the buoys they're not basketball size. They're like 4 feet in diameter.
They're very large.
They're huge.
River buoys.
So we're talking about razor wire, sharpened circular saws, and webbing. And That's the current state of affairs with the cruelty at
It's
the border.
well, it's criminal, is what it is. And many human rights activists have noted that. It's also been noted that the floating death traps, the floating barricade death traps, are actually on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande. It's really an abomination to a country that has the Statue of Liberty still standing. It's an abomination to human rights around the world, and we're doing it. That's us. That's the U.S.
And that's the Fifth
And that's
Circuit.
the Fifth Circuit Court upholding it and saying, yeah, we're going to let that go. I'm horrified. Frankly, I'm just absolutely horrified. Um,
And that is the extent.
well,
of the,
beyond that, it is not the extent of my horror.
yes, extent of
We
my prepared remarks.
Okay, then. There's watchdog groups that have been looking at what has happened with the border under Trump. Right. So, what we're looking at with the Rio Grande is a continuation of the militarist border that results in uh, terror and breaks human rights agreements and understandings. So, about that other border wall that Trump was building, that we got to see up close and personal when we crossed into Arizona. There's the town that we crossed at had the border wall going through it. We could see it on the hillside like a scar when we went through Arizona last year. And I just want to sort of quote from this that the U.S. government watchdog agency Thursday released a report exposing how former President Trump's wall along the nation's border has affected cultural natural resources, and the environment and people, as critics have long said it would. Guess what? Critics were right. So the about 458 miles of border that was constructed between 2017 and 2021, about 81% of the miles of that were constructed replaced already existing barriers. The agency installed over 62% of the barrier miles on federal lands, including those managed by the Department of the Interior. Um, it is problematic for so many reasons. Uh, Old saguaro cacti were destroyed in the National Sanctuary for saguaros. 200-year-old cacti were destroyed. Indigenous sacred sites and lands were disrupted. Indigenous rights were stopped. Uh, it became harder for animals to migrate. It did irreparable harm to the environment, and it hurt the cultural traditions of the people who have lived along the border for longer than this country's existed. So, House Natural Resources Committee ranking member Raul Grijalva said that from the start, President Trump's border wall was nothing more than a symbolic message of hate aimed at vilifying migrants and bolstering extreme mega rhetoric. It's a racist political stunt that has been an ineffective waste of billions of American taxpayer money. And now we know that it has caused immeasurable, irreparable harm to our environment and cultural heritage as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. Um, Environmentally destructive, harmful to World Heritage sites and culture, and harmful to the people that live along the border, the indigenous people who, again, have been here longer than any national borders have. So, all around, a horrible idea, as we all knew. And how do we mitigate? How do we take it down? And how do we not continue this madness with now putting floating razor wire circular saw death traps in the Rio Grande? How do we and calling that some kind of security? How obscene. And so that's what I had on my mind this morning that I wanted to bring to the foreground.
I think we have to remember the racism of it. I mean, it's one of those things that
Absolutely.
it's like we're so used to it, we don't talk about it all that much, but it is something that is done against brown people. I remember just the
Trump's characterization of the hordes, the caravans and hordes of brown people that were going to be sweeping in to our country. And that's why he had to secure the border by putting this obscene, ineffective, costly, and destructive border wall in place.
the GOP has learned that it can attract some La Raza votes by appealing to traditional family ideas. That still works to some degree, but the core of the Republican Party has always intensely hated brown people. I remember many years ago when Henry B. Gonzalez of Texas, representative of Texas, finally ascended to lead the banking committee. The Bush administration was so upset that a brown person was getting that much power, and a brilliant brown person at that, that they hired an assassin, a CIA assassin, who came to Henry B's favorite watering hole, where he was having breakfast, and he pulled out a ceramic gun, which at that time was only possessed by the CIA. It was the only place on the planet you could possibly get a functioning ceramic gun that you could run through security at an airport. And he pulled it up to fire it, and Henry B., who was a champion boxer, knocked him senseless. And they kept it out of the news. It was just amazing how well it was covered up. And to this day, it has been erased from history. But that was an assassination attempt. And it was straight up because he said that he was going to look after the little person and the brown people. And Bush administration just couldn't stand it. And I see that in that floating barrier with its razor and its saws to cut apart little children trying to swim underneath. And and men too, sure, yeah, but we don't see the bodies. We don't see the torn bodies of the men and women and children who try to get. And the reason they're trying to get north is because the U.S. has made things so desperate to the south. So,
yeah, there are people escaping cartel violence, which has been made far worse by the U.S.'s war on drugs. There are people escaping climate destruction, which has been made far worse by the U.S.'s contributions, shall we say, to climate disaster causing chemicals. And our carbon footprint is immense compared to the rest of the world.
Yes, and it's so ironic because there is a tremendous shortage of agricultural experts and workers in the United States, and a huge percentage of the people trying to come north are literally agricultural experts, and so they are getting this treatment. Purely, I mean, it really does come down to xenophobia and racism.
It's racism. It's peddling racism to make money for your party. And and the actual people be damned. The people involved are pawns, as they often are in the grand scheme of politics in this country. We can see that no more clearly than in DeSantis's obscene. I'm just going to get back to that word, obscene treatment of migrants by shoving them on planes and flying them around to Martha's Vineyard, New York, Chicago, and other cities that he's perceived to be liberal. That have said that immigrants should be treated well. And so he is doing this at great expense to the state and, great stress to the migrants involved who are being used as political pawns.
It's criminal.
Absolutely. It's criminal. It's obscene. And it's, the treatment of immigrants around the world is terrifying. People flee their homelands because of threats of violence, oppression, and environmental destruction, famine. These are the things that get people to actually leave their communities and their families. And instead of helping them as a nation, as we have pledged to do, not only because we are part of the charter of the UN on immigration, but because there's that statue again. Uh, Statue of Liberty with that "Send me, you're tired, you're poor." My adopted family immigrated from England, one of the most privileged countries to immigrate from, but they were poor and they came in after World War II. And some one of my uncles was blind and held up at Ellis Island for several weeks, a couple of months, until an Oregon senator intervened. So the idea of families breaking up, of leaving everything, these are ideas that I grew up with. And so imagining that happening to a family that was poor and not white and not coming from a favored nation like England, but in fact coming from nations where the politicians of this country have spent decades demonizing, with the last president, talking about how Mexico, the people swarming at the border, as though they were not even human swarms of people. You say that about insects, really. Um, that they were rapists and murderers. They're not sending their best, as he said. Uh, I take this personally. It's against humanity. And if I have one life to live and one voice, that is something I really cannot stop speaking out about. How we treat each other, how we treat immigrants, how we extend our human rights on this planet. It's come to really a low point, and
And that is
that's what I
terrifying.
wanted to put out this morning.
It is terrifying. I mean,
Terrifying.
as I've often commented, supposing 20 inches of rain fell on Portland, well, we'd be refugees. And refugees notice no one cares why you're a refugee. They just want you to get out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. So, on that note, anything else?
Fa la la. It's a lovely world.
Um, right. I didn't actually have an end plan for that
It
rant.
is actually lovely. I love looking out the window at our pine trees. The neighborhood's pine trees, really, and the deciduous trees, and they're just lovely today with their leaves doing the what do
Well,
you call this motion? The leaves are doing this motion. It's like they're waving at you.
I was going to say, I think that's
Hi,
waving
they wave back.
in the breeze. Right. Anyways, to regain focus, sometimes the horrors that we talk about, they're really horrific. And it's hard to know where to really end it without getting into some sort of silly, well, then let's just hope for the best. And, I don't think there's like a Little Rascals, let's make a show and we'll fix it ending to this. But it is a call to continuously speak out in favor of the oppressed, to continuously speak out against the idiocy of border barriers, be they walls that damage uh, cultures, animals, the land, um, or the razor wire, horrific floating barriers that just flat out kill people. Speak out against them and the racism that's inherent therein and the cost that is inherent therein. People are not pawns. And so, as we get into this political season, I think we're going to see more and more stunts, especially from the GOP, that really treat people as pawns for their political charades. And so, how do we expose that? How do we uh, get to that talking point? How do we counter it in the mass attention? That's the question I'm left with. Right.
I agree. No more of such charades. I just wanted to say charade.
Right. So, with that, I have this here tarot reading. We are moving into a new moon. Next week will be a new moon. I believe on the 14th. Um, so we are in the waning moon. It's a time of clearing away. It's a time of becoming clearer. It's a time of setting things to order. paring down. And so, especially as we are looking at moving into the Harvest Festival, the day and night time is becoming more and more equalized, right? Because we have the fall equinox coming right
Ooh,
up.
yeah, when's that coming?
It's coming up on the 21st, I do believe. And it is, of course, that's the time that we have pretty much equal day and night, light and dark. And um, yeah, it's right around the corner. We can see the daylight shortening. The temperatures are seeming a little more fall-like, though I note that it looks like if predictions hold true, we'll be bouncing in the 70s and 80s, so a little bit warm for this time of year for this area. But it's feeling pretty fall-like. We're seeing leaves turn and connecting in with that cycle, excuse me, of change and balance and harvest, bringing in that which you have tried to manifest for this year, looking at the rewards of your efforts. And so, against that background, uh, we have the Page of Wands, we have the King of Pentacles, and we have the Knight of Cups inversed. And um, what do these mean? Well, the Knight of Cups inversed talks about disappointment, talks about things that we had great hopes for, dreams of, things that we really wanted to have in our lives. And we realized that's not really where it's at. It's not going to happen. Somebody's proved themselves to be false, or that there's just that idea that you had is not really going to be working out. And so it's caused heartache, right? It's caused disappointment. But it's important to as you allow yourself to feel that heartache, that disappointment, remember that there is still a whole world that is there to play with, to engage with, to have fun with. So it's taking care of the hurt. It's recognizing that it's absolutely real, but that you are actually in a very good position to weather it. That you have resources, emotional and material resources that can help you not only get through the disappointment. It's also important to make sure that you're not going to hold back, that you don't become stingy, and that you continue to share resources. Um, it's one of the reasons you've acquired them. And again, this can be uh, your own personality, your own physical help. It can also be physical resources, but to remember that you are you're okay. Feel the hurt and remember that moving on, engaging in play, and sort of encouraging your own creative efforts and your own will to come to the fore and take you to a new place to refresh yourself. That's what we have in the cards today.
Halfway between the Oak King and the Holly King, says John. Thanks for
In,
bringing that up.
indeed. Is there anything else?
There's one more thing I want to tag on to our show, and that is we're coming up on the anniversary of 9/11. And 9/11 is a big lie. I want you to pull up ae911truth.org and follow the science. 3 buildings fell on that day, not 2. Rudy Giuliani really did say they're going to pull building 7 being the 3rd building. The hole in the Pentagon was made with something that didn't have wings. And it is impossible that some superhuman Arab piloted an aircraft pulling 5 Gs. It is impossible that the track of the aircraft that is known could have pulled less than 5 Gs without passing out. The whole thing is a lie. And you're not supposed to say that because it hurts the Gold Star mothers and it hurts all the people who lost a limb fighting the wars that followed. But it was a lie, and we're still controlled by that lie, and we're still controlled by the regime, the national insecurity regime that was set up after that.
Well, I want to also say that people who say it was a lie are immediately discredited because we are thrown into a really nasty shit pile of folks who are anti-Semitic and just really not logical folks, not folks you want to be on the same team with, by and large, who have made a living out of saying that 9/11 was a lie, that it was a grand conspiracy. And it's, because of this, that, or the other thing. They can't really agree on what it was. But they have put out a lot of harmful bullshit. And so a lot of folks who were maybe initially suspicious about the events and what immediately followed kind of backed away from talking about it because we did not want to be associated with the likes of the anti-Semites and the folks that were all about the lizard people. We did not want to be associated with them, but there have been really, really good researchers who have worked on the subject. I'm going to say Mossadegh Nafis Mossadegh Ahmed, who I interviewed several times, is a really good independent researcher and not a part of that tinfoil hat brigade. Now, of course, anytime we talk about conspiracies, it's thrown directly into QAnon land, and
sure, it's a very effective smear technique.
It's exactly so,
and it's true. I mean, those Sarah Palin is one of those who agrees that 9/11 was a hoax. And the Nazis say water is good for you.
Yeah, right. So just
never drink water.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it is, that anniversary is coming up on Monday. It's an interesting thing. Glad you threw it out there at the end. One of the things I think it's important to remember, one of the most important things to remember is however it is we got there. And where we cut that is still affecting us is the Patriot Act. It was passed within days of the event. It's over 500 pages. And it's still there. It never, how do we say, it's never sunsetted. That's the word I'm looking for. And so look at the Patriot Act and the effect it's had on us even today. And with that, thank you.
The message that I put on here about AE 9/11 has been deleted. Look, it's gone.
Okay. I don't actually know what you're talking about.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So thank you so much for being with us. And with that, let's just move forward.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Minus COVID.
It'll be better, I swear.